We will be covering 8 estimating bottlenecks that might be preventing you growth or success today. We've been having these meetings internally and trying to think of good topics to discuss during these webinars, and this one popped up and we just started rattling off bottlenecks, and then we started talking with Electrical Enlightenment, who's joining us today, and they had a bunch of great bottlenecks to add in. And so we're doing something a little bit different, having Electrical Enlightenment join us today, which is great because they're going to add a ton of good insight and experience and stories for us. And so let's get to it. I'm Derek De La Quadri. I'm the president of Vision InfoSoft, and Brian Hoffelder is with us today. He is our training and software development expert. And we have Electrical Enlightenment, Tim, who is the general manager of Electrical Enlightenment. And he does a lot with the company, of course, but also works with electrical contractors and other businesses to work through improving processes and preparing for growth. And I'm sure he's going to add a lot of other good details that they do. And Brent is here, and he is the sales manager at Electrical Enlightenment and works with a lot of electrical contractors and actually works through the bottlenecks with you, the electrical contractor. So Brent, Tim, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor.
Great. And I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, to add a little extra detail that I left out about Electrical Enlightenment so everybody knows what they're getting into here.
Yeah, absolutely. So he hit on it a little bit. We're a third-party electrical estimating service. So we estimate jobs all around the world. We do a lot of jobs out near Derek on the West Coast. And we do commercial, we'll do industrial, we'll even help some of our partners out with residential jobs as well. And then we also have a division that does mechanical, plumbing, HVAC. It's a little bit smaller. I'd say 90% of our work is electrical estimating. And our guys have been using the Vision software for 23 years now. And we love it. It's our go-to software that we use. And Tim, he's another layer of the company. He does a lot of consulting and working with other businesses, and he can tell you a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So real quick on that. So Brent, has done a great job. He really manages most of the customer relationships and most of the team at Enlightenment companies. So he is the go-to guy. And then we started a company or a division. It's called Corporate Enlightenment. That's where I started. I'm the first person, but then we're going to work on building a team of people that can help with succession planning, bottlenecks throughout the whole company, scaling companies, getting companies ready to, move on to the second generation. I don't really like to get into selling off companies. I like to see them have a good succession plan, and then basically work with a lot of electrical owners, companies, a lot of our partners on helping them with their business too.
All right.
That's that.
Good. All right. Yep. Yeah, it's good to hear. 23 years with Electrical Bid Manager. And
yes, that's right.
Yeah,
we have been
awesome.
using these guys' software for 23 years, so we know it inside now.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for that. And so I wanted to mention something real quick. If you're new to YouTube, this is a YouTube Live, and at least right now it is. And on the right side of the screen is a chat. So feel free, if you're logged into YouTube, which is just a Google login, you can chat or ask questions or whatever you like on the right side there. So let's go ahead and get to the first electrical estimating bottleneck. Bottleneck number 1, estimator capacity. Not the capacitance, I suppose.
Or the capacitor.
Yeah.
Well, I'll dive into this for a second, but one of the things, and it's a little cliche, but when you think about any business or managing anything, you have to worry about your capacity and how much you can execute. So for an electrical contractor, we have to worry about our capacity both in the field, but more importantly, in forward part of the process. Estimating is a crucial spot where a lot of our customers feel the pain of bottlenecking, and that's where either internally you build some type of measures where you have cross training or people who can be support inside the business to help, or you can work with a team like us, and there's there's a few reputable estimators, third-party estimators out there. So it's really, we provide that relief valve to allow customers to not burn themselves out and miss all their family time or lose focus and control of the business because they're so busy estimating. So I'll let Brent take the next one.
Yeah. So extending bid dates out, what we mean here is a lot of times we have the opportunity to go back with the GC and ask them for an extension, especially when you're working with a GC that prefers you. Maybe you have a bunch on your plate. You don't have those pressure reliefs really built in yet. I've seen it a lot in the past couple of weeks. GCs coming to their subs and actually extending bid dates and allowing them to, bid on that job. So instead of just writing something off just because you think it's a deadline, which sometimes it is, but every now and then there's some favor with the GCs that you build these relationships with that you can stretch it out a little bit and fit it in, And then this one too, best and final. This is very important. I see it a lot with the newer guys that we bring in. Always, with vendor pricing, even with submitting your proposal, never just let it be and give up on these things. If you feel the lighting package is a little bit too much, there's always room in the end of these jobs to talk to your vendor and see if they can do something better for you. See if you can get a best and final number out of them. And the same thing with submitting your bid. Don't just submit it and go away. Ask for feedback. Ask if you can give a best and final. Tie these things in. And vendor pricing. There you go again. It kind of wraps right in there. And limit interruptions. Tim can really talk to this one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So for the limited interruptions, so one of the things that we have unique to us is we run estimating. That's it. We don't have any other project management or people pulling at us or purchasers trying to dive at us and figure out what we need to spec something out or help them figure something out. So, we're pretty lucky. But with a contractor that's running his own company or her own company, you really got to be sensitive to these estimators are deep into their plans. They're deep into thought, and if you interrupt them or if you don't have the culture in the company set up to allow these guys to focus to put these numbers together, it can get real dangerous. So in any business and doing anything, if we get interrupted, it's hard to have a good product and not to make big mistakes. With the estimates, I think everybody with any experience, and if you're a new electrical contractor, it's where you win or lose the profitability of the company, and you really don't want to dilute that with interruptions. So it's really
absolutely
definitely one of the biggest challenges I see when I've done a lot of on-site training over the years, and I guess you can't totally get rid of interruptions if it's an estimator and a project manager, because by definition the project manager needs to be doing a lot of different things besides estimating, but still they need to have some kind of an environment where when they're doing estimating, they can limit, if not totally eliminate interruptions. For a estimator or a person who's just an estimator, it's even more important. But again, I've been to some pretty large contractors, and I work with chief estimators, and they get interrupted all the time. Chief estimator or somebody who's working on a job that needs to be out, those interruptions really kill the estimator. It's almost better if you can lock them away in a closet somewhere and let them work. Their productivity will be immensely, and their accuracy, the number of mistakes they make will be less too if they're not getting interrupted all the time. That's the nature of the business, but you've got to be realistic about it.
Huge thing to add to that, and it's something to open people's eyes up to. But our estimators all work remotely, and we manage them all really efficiently, and it's like we're all in the same office. But one thing, if you have a core in your business, if you have an estimator that truly is an estimator, open up your thoughts on maybe letting them work from home some days or permanently, because that's huge. Our team is super efficient, and there's not that I'm trying to be, don't be personable or anything, but it cuts down on so much wasted walking to the water cooler and doing this and doing that, and
Oh,
the
yeah.
interruptions, or it's just, we've had a really good success with enlightenment companies managing our team remotely. So I think that's something I want to make sure people hear.
And it really takes the burden off of them. When Tim and I first came into the company, we were trying to figure out a process and a structure to limit the interruptions as much as possible. So Tim developed a whole chart on this, and a job comes in and what we do with these jobs and that, and we cut down the time tremendously on interrupting these guys, and productivity went through the roof, camaraderie comes up, the environment is better. Super important what these guys are talking to.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we passed our time on that topic, but we do have a question. We're warming up. We're warming up here.
Yes.
We do have a question that might be a bit bigger than this topic, but I might as well. I want to throw it out here to maybe stir the pot of more questions. But so the first question was
Saturdays and Sundays.
how do you estimate if drawings are not provided? And the follow-up question was, I'm a new master electrician and never submitted a bid before. How do I come up with my number, overhead, labor? I mean, that
sounds like a perfect next webinar to me. Or maybe you guys already have one that you did. But to touch on it lightly, and one of you guys, I'll touch on some of this stuff, but some of it, if you don't have good prints, because I think that was part of it, you got to kind of deal with, coming up with your recipe on calculating per square feet and, understanding what you're getting yourself into for complexity. And it gets real dangerous, but that's something that we don't do much. We'll give a budget number based on something like that, but we don't try to advise our customers based on anything without prints, because it's we work all over the world. But I don't know, Brian, maybe you want to touch base on that a little deeper.
No, I think that's kind of a given, is you have to have some kind of a pretty good idea of what the job requires. And the only way you can do that is with prints. I suppose, at some point you could have a list of all the things they need to install, but even that's not really adequate, because the location and all that is important too. So it really is, I think it's just a base requirement to have some kind of a drawing.
Yeah, wouldn't that be the first step then, is to make them? I mean, it reminds me of the house I just built. We walked around with the electrician with the prints and like broken up into pieces, and then labeled the prints as we walked from room to room. I mean, that's different than commercial and industrial or et cetera. But it reminds me of that. It's like, well, I couldn't get a bid until we actually created the prints with the symbols and everything on it.
Yeah, what a lot of our partners do is they estimate. They got to go through the site. So say you're doing something with commercial or industrial, you got to go there and you got to roll off the footages. You got to figure out how long all your runs are. You got to figure out what type of gear you need. You don't want to bankrupt your company, and you also don't want to get yourself out because you don't sharpen your number and you go so high, you're off the you're not an option. And back to overhead labor, that's all stuff, so there's I'll leave it with two rules of thumb if Derek lets me.
Of course.
There's the labor that you want to charge to be with the market in your market, and it's unique for every demographic, every country, every state, every city. So you got to think of that, like what's the going labor rate that you might be able to pull off, but then what's the labor rate that you truly, are paying for, and how do you calculate that? That's pretty easy. It's actually harder to figure out your demographic labor rate. And then the overhead part, same type of thing. You can kind of go with some numbers that people use, but everybody's overhead's different. And overhead is essentially just calculating all the costs of your business except for your value-add employees. So the value-add employees, I know it hurts everybody's feelings, but are the people who truly do the work that you're getting paid for and billing hours out.
Oh yeah, and there's profit too. There's profit on that.
Yep.
On that equation.
And then profit's another percentage. Yep. And at the end of the day, you can calculate all that with your books, and we do help with that. So something we support people with if they don't know how to do it.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, guys. I think that we can move on to topic 2. Brian, you got it.
There we are. Okay, you want to take this one, Brent?
Yeah, absolutely. Addressing
Yeah.
lack of experience, know what jobs are in your wheelhouse, right? So I know here at Enlightenment Companies, we get asked all the time, hey, I'm a residential guy. I'm trying to break into commercial work. I'm going to need some help estimating these things. And that's where our team of estimators can come in and help get into that stuff. But you don't want to be going from residential to heavy industrial or something like that. You want to go from residential, start doing maybe smaller Tim Hortons, Chick-fil-A's, just smaller commercial jobs and getting into that before you
Or
start taking
service
on,
work.
before you start
In
taking
there.
on schools and government work and all that stuff. But it's really good if you are dabbling into any of that, getting a check bid from a company like ours, getting support, getting that advice that you need to bid those jobs. Dangers of bidding outside of your wheelhouse, making sure you can even perform that work before you go after it. I know we get companies that come out to us for a quote and they have no idea what they're getting into, and that's okay, but we go over that job with them, and sometimes I actually kind of talk them through what's involved in that, and sometimes they'll back right away from that job, and we fully support them. We're not trying to estimate a job that's not going to be good for them just to get a sale or something. We're a partnership with our people, but I would say that's so important, all those different layers in there.
And something to add to that too, Brent, is like thinking about bonding and things of that nature.
Oh, yeah.
We've had customers that they give us the prints and we're cruising, everything's ripping. We start to figure out how much this thing really starts to estimate out at, and they don't even have
they can't get the
capability
bonding
to get
for
the
it.
bonding, or they don't have the resources to even produce the bid. And then, we're hours into this thing, and we always try to help people out and deal with the learning experience for the forward future partnership. But those are the types of things that get people caught up, as they don't have any clue. And another thing, when you're thinking bonding and all those types of things, if you're doing stuff about the books and you're showing your true numbers and you're really running your business transparently, you have an easier time growing into those types of environments where you can use bonding. You can do those things. If you got things that aren't getting caught properly and you can't hit the right financial metrics for getting bonded and stuff, you might have the team, you might feel like you can take the job on and execute it, all that stuff. But at some point when you get into commercial and industrial, you have to consider making sure you can get bonded.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Or you get somebody with deep pockets that can back you, whatever you need.
And the
But you gotta have a plan.
experience topic that I run across a lot, and when I'm training a new vision customer, is the electrician who's just getting started with estimating. He's mostly been bidding or been doing residential work as he starts his business because that's what's available to him, but they're trying to get into commercial. Now, most of the time, these guys have experience in the field doing commercial work, so that's not the problem. They just need now to make that step of being able to actually put together a commercial bid, and it's a lot more involved than a residential bid.
Yeah,
we run into that all the time. I can do the work, but I don't know how to price it.
And I'll get the story, and it's true. Hey, I've been doing commercial for 23 years for this other company, but now I'm out on my own. I don't know how to estimate this, but I can do it. It's almost weekly.
Yep, at least weekly.
Yep.
There was some questions, Derek. I don't know if we should.
Yeah, Matt had a question. We had John Holmes joining us from Memphis. Hey, John. And we've got Matt back with a follow-up question. How do you find out your demographic labor rates?
So that's a tough one. I mean, one thing you might find is if you carry the right relationships with people, that being fellow electrical contractors, GCs, things of that nature, they can help you a lot. But really, a lot of it too comes down to really understanding your bid, being confident in your bid, and getting that feedback back from the GCs and whoever you're bidding with, the end customers too, on how's my number, how far off is it? The material should be pretty simple. So most of it should be in your labor, and there's the rate, and then there's efficiency and all that. So just because I charge $100 or $150 for my guy, but he might get something done in a third of the time as this other company that charges $70. So it isn't even that important, the labor rate. It's important that you have an efficient team. You charge the appropriate rate for your company. And if you do that, you'll probably be able to do well in your demographic. And then you might find out how much meat you're leaving on the table in some of these areas, because they can get away with charging way more. But what we're all trying to do as business owners is do it as efficient as possible, right? And charge the best rate that makes sense for the market, and profit off the gap, right? And so I guess you got to just kind of figure it out through that. The network of people in that area is the best answer. And we, not to break trust from our customers, we don't share that information at all with any other customer, because we think it's a break in trust. Mm-hmm. So we'll help you calculate based on your company numbers. We'll talk to you about, like, if you bring some numbers, if we feel they're good or not. We'll actually recommend if we think something's crazy, but we'll never tell anybody a number of another company in their area, because we think it would be the end of trust.
Absolutely. Yep.
Go ahead and skip through or get to the bullets, I think, Brian. Oh, I guess there weren't any bullets on that one.
That was quick.
I see your questions. We'll kind of trickle them in. I want to get started on the bottleneck number 4 first, because the question wasn't specific to that bottleneck, I don't think.
Sorry.
So one of the most obvious ways to deal with the issue of bidding, having enough time to bid accurately, is to have good tools for bidding, which is, having a good estimating software program that you are comfortable with and proficient with. It's the fastest, most accurate way to do an estimate. It should be easy to use. Those are things we really try to pride ourselves with here at Vision, is to make it fast and accurate and easy to use. It's all based on an estimating database. You've got to have confidence that the numbers in your estimating database are accurate. Not only the price of the materials, but the amount of labor it takes to install each item. And a lot of that's going to be experience, bidding some jobs, and then more importantly, tracking the jobs to make sure that you're coming in under budget. But if you have an estimating program, a software program, it's easier to train new people, because you're teaching them a tool that and that you really consistent with your company.
Just real quick too on that, on having that database, you can get the database when you get the software, but like Enlightenment's been working for 23 years with these guys. We've been manipulating and adjusting our database to make it more efficient for our team. We've been doing it to make it more accurate for our customers. And when you look at it from a standpoint of your specific business, you can really fine tune that database for your business. And that's something that's super unique. And the tribal knowledge that you'd have to train somebody if you weren't using this software is captured in a database, and that's the real power.
Absolutely. And we just recently took all our guys off of paper and got them all into software, and the efficiencies have gone through the roof. Another big thing about this software is you can screen share. So you could have an estimator, located somewhere else, and you could have a project manager, management ship role, whatever, and we could do a screen share and walk right through these projects, which is to me, it's amazing. We're doing it with our customers daily, sharing screens and showing them where we're at, any questions, anything like that. We work through that software.
All right. One of the biggest challenges I see to growth is, again, the estimator, or that's been familiar with doing unit pricing, which is real common in residential. It's not difficult just based on experience to come up with a price for an outlet, a price for a switch, a price for a dimmer, a price for a fixture. Those are pretty simple things. The problem is it isn't scalable. When you get into the commercial world, unit pricing just doesn't work because you have to have a complete takeoff of the job. It's a lot different if you've got 10 fixtures in a room versus 100 fixtures in a room versus 1,000 fixtures on the entire job. There's a whole lot more that goes into it. All the feeders and all of the branch wiring and all that. It's just not something that is scalable from a simple, limited environment like a residential project where, just a little bit of experience, you can come up with a price that you can bid with for the simple stuff like switches and fans and lighting and that kind of thing. It just doesn't work in the commercial, especially doesn't work in the industrial world. So.
That's right.
Those are.
But I run into it sometimes on with larger contractors than you might expect. They're still doing parts of their bid with, or entire bids with unit pricing. And not only is the accuracy suspect, but when you get a job just with a unit price, at that point you have no idea what materials are required. You've got a price. It's $100,000 or $500,000, but you don't know where to start as far as all the materials you need to order and how much labor is going to be needed to various parts of the job. So it's just the whole transition you need to make if you're going from the residential world of unit pricing to commercial bidding. Even on relatively small commercial jobs, it's really not practical to do the unit pricing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where we get pretty involved, obviously, it was with material pricing and the labor parts of the estimate. Our pricing software, there's two aspects of the pricing software. There's the electrical bid manager, which has the prices of all your common materials. And then there's the labor units that the program has for all of the items in the database too. So an estimating program will typically provide that. It'll have prices for material and labor values for all of the materials or all the items in the database. There are labor manuals out there. One of them that's very common is the NECA labor manual. It's very comprehensive. It's a good resource, especially if you're looking to get some labor values on things you're not familiar with. You can buy it online from NECA, National Electrical Contractors Association. People associate it as being a union labor manual. It's not. It's just a labor manual with how long it takes to install pretty much the whole world of electrical materials. Whether your cost of labor is a union or a non-union rate is irrelevant to that part of it, but it's a really good resource for getting some basic labor units on materials. Mm-hmm. The thing I think that the ball gets dropped a lot is just tracking your past cost or your cost on jobs. You got to go back and compare. Okay, we had an estimate of X 100 hours for the job. How did we come in? And then if you can break it down further into the various parts of the job, the feeders and the fixtures and the branch wiring and the trim and all that, if you can break down your estimate and look at where on the job you came in under or over budget, that's really important to the whole process. You've got to know that you can at least come in at or under your budget. Just having a number is not that helpful if you don't know that your crew can perform.
And I think real quick to add to that, Brian, too, and there's some business owners maybe on the video. There's some people who are estimators. This is where we wanted to talk about a little bit of that, making sure that we listen to our estimators, but also get our estimators the feedback of how the business is performing so that they can continue to sharpen up how they perform. Because really, and a lot of the, smaller electric companies are the owner is the estimator, and that's great. And that person usually gets all this feedback or pays attention to all these metrics. But, the constant feedback and calibration of how the field team's doing, how you're coming in on your closeouts, on your materials, how all these things are happening is so crucial to get back to your in-house estimators. And then even to get back to us, we have some partners we've had for 10, 15 years. We have to get this information I mean, even longer maybe, but we have to get this information back so that we can continue to adjust for, you know, their efficiency, the pricing in their area, and also, you know, any other things that happen, you know. And then teaching people about if you have to move a bunch of material 500 feet with some hard way that takes a bunch of labor, you know, you got to remember that and get that feedback back to the estimator. Be like, hey, watch out for this. We had to walk all this stuff way over here, and it took us like insane amount of extra time, you know, that kind of stuff.
It's the only way you're going to sharpen and get better. I mean, and it's the only way we're going to perform for our customers is getting that feedback. It's a major point. Yeah.
So I just want to hit on that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Michael says he keeps a updated copy of RS means nearby to help verify estimates.
Yep, that's a good resource too. That's probably the other one. There's a couple others out there, but means and NECA are the two kind of most widely recognized labor unit manuals. We just wanted to briefly talk about change orders because change orders are an estimate. Sometimes, depending on the amount of changes, you may have to start and I've seen this quite a bit where you've got to do the estimate all over because the nature of the change order is significant that you can't just add a few things or take out a few things. You may have to really actually go back and start over. So that's something that, you know, and that's often a project manager that has to do that. It could be something that goes back to the original estimator. But
we always like explaining that to our customers, Brian, when we got to do a whole brand new estimate on a change order.
Yeah, we had to do one of these last week. Everything changed. We had to do
it all changed, man. We can't. It's just better to start from scratch.
Yeah, it takes more time, and then also in that translation, you might lose some things, and you can't have that.
And it seems obvious, but I try to mention this to every new customer I train is when you look at changes to the original bid, whether it's a change order or whether it's just additions or changes to the original project, make sure you save the original bid. You've got to have that before and after. If you go back and make the changes to the original bid, and you know, then you don't have the before and after picture. Make a copy of the original bid and do the changes to the copy if that's what you need to do. It's a real simple thing. You know, the software lets you do it in a couple of seconds. But the minute you go back and start making changes to the original bid, you've lost the integrity. I suppose you may have done a printout and things like that too, but there's just no reason not to make an electronic copy of the job and make the changes to the copy.
Absolutely.
So we'll turn this one back to you guys.
All right. So yeah, insufficient training and wrong structure. So basically, you know, when we talk about insufficient training, it's just not being like, so one of the biggest things that we get to help people with, or a lot of entrepreneurs and business people struggle with, is they can run the business and figure out the business themselves. But figuring out how to scale their business and teach somebody how to do what they've been owning and keeping close to their chest is always very difficult for them to figure out how to do. I'm not saying everyone, but it's a very difficult thing. So most owners start out being an estimator, then they need to train an estimator. This is where if the owner bites the bullet and gets into building a database and having a software, first of all, they become more efficient, but also the training is just so much easier. We also offer training. So if somebody, you know, and you guys offer training. So, but when we work with somebody, a lot of times the owner, like, they don't want no part of learning the software. They want their new estimator to do it. Or the new estimator's like, no, I don't want to work here unless you buy software. And then they're stuck in this, like, well, now they have an estimator that's making all the decisions in their business for their money. Now they can definitely check it all and everything, but they didn't have as much influence on that training process and stuff. And they don't have as much value to add to building the database and sharpening the database and making it all better. So, you know, it's really just, it's so important to get these numbers right and to have your estimators know what they're doing. And I think that's one of the major things we want to run home. And so the right tools, part of that is having software, having your on-screen takeoff, having your pricing, you know, making sure you have some type of pricing database to pick off of, have your pricing strategy with your local vendors. You know, you can also build your local vendor pricing into this software. We don't use that because we work on so many other places, but You guys see that a lot, right? Or how is that working with the customers? Do they do that a lot? Build in the pricing with their local vendor?
They do it a couple of different ways. There are options to do it through integrating with what we call net pricers. Then they can get their actual distributors pricing on demand.
Yeah.
They also do it by just reviewing, on the larger jobs, they'll review the pricing on the commodities with one or two of their larger suppliers and just either spot check some items, or they'll get pricing on sometimes a complete job. So,
yep. Okay.
Right. And we'll do a lot of times a hot sheet with pipe, conduit, and wire, and then go through those big items, and then, take national pricing off all the other small commodities. And like Tim mentioned earlier, and then, modulate that up and down based on how the numbers come in with percents. But at least you can put in main pipe and wire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's so it kind of both the right tools and right structure. And then another thing too is just understanding how to manage, when you come to structure, how do you manage an estimating team? Do you set targets for how long estimates take? How do you know how many promises you can make when you're talking to customers? So like a lot of times, the project starts with somebody saying, hey, we'll bid that. Then it gets shoved down in the estimator pipeline. Then the estimator's got to figure out how to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times that's two different people. So it creates this conflict. And a lot of times it can create disappointment for your customer because we just don't have the resources. So another important thing is having some type of way to understand what the estimators can fit in and what you can commit to your customer, even at the estimating standpoint. And then obviously at the execution, you tell a customer when you're going to actually do the work, but it's also, hey, when am I actually going to get you pricing and all that? And it's a tough thing to handle. That's what we have done a really good job learning how to do that and do a good job doing it with Enlightenment, but we only deal with estimators. So our core focus is that's our value stream.
Right.
But we know when we can fit jobs in and promise jobs before we drop on the estimators. And I think that's a really powerful thing for when you're managing your estimating team. Also,
Absolutely.
that can make you call us faster because your team can't do it.
Oh yeah, and the faster we get it, the better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got it down to looking at the plan pages and knowing, this is going to take an hour and a half. This one's going to take 2. This one's a wastewater treatment. It's going to take 3. This is a note driven, and we kind of are able to go through all the plans, look at them, and roughly have a good estimate of how long it's going to take our guys. A little bit on that heavy side so that we're always fitting that in, but then being able to jump on something sooner once that's cleaned up. But
leaving buffer.
Vital thing. Yep.
But again, all things that when you use a software and you have a good process, a good structure and training, you can actually develop that type of management.
Right.
Some companies have tons of estimators, like 6, 7, 10, 20 estimators.
Yeah, we talk to them that run like that. Absolutely.
All right, I have a couple questions here. Jerry Arnold asked, is there a percentage of job to use for non-direct labor, planning, material handling, etc.?
Let me handle that. I guess then you guys can jump into Tim. And typically, your labor unit should include what I call normal, non-productive, indirect labor. So the normal time it takes to lay out a job, material handling, cleanup, breaks, all of that should be included in the base number of hours that the estimating program produces. Now, that being said, it's roughly 30% of the hours that you come up with. So if the job has 1,000 hours, we've already figured that 300 hours will be dedicated to those kinds of things: the normal layout, the normal material handling, the normal breaks. So what an estimator really needs to think about is there anything about this job that's over and above normal? You guys mentioned the material handling job. One of the jobs we worked on was actually just the fire alarm portion of the SoFi Stadium in LA a few years ago. I think the job had about 15,000 hours just for the fire alarm conduit and boxes. But but we had almost as many hours for non-productive labor because of the nature of the job. You've got a multi-story building, underground, you've got security to get in and out, and all the material handling was off-site. So anytime you needed something, it was a minimum of 30 minutes to an hour just to get something from the storage to the job. So we ended up with virtually almost as many hours of that non-direct, non-productive labor on the job.
Do a renovation on a prison.
Yeah, I think of that, Tim. Security, airport. We've done underground train systems where they got to haul their workers in at a certain time, haul them out at a certain time.
Oh yeah,
all that stuff. We got a guy out of Alaska. He's got to fly his materials in. He's got to account, for all the materials because there's no trips back and forth. So
they also have to account for additional materials because
if
you're short 2 fixtures or you're short pipe, it's going to take 3 months to get it in there. So you've got to over order just because of the nature of the shipping and
that's a really good point. That's a really good point because there's nothing worse than having an army of labor ready to put something in and do something and not having enough stuff.
No material.
And we've seen a lot of that over the last few years with just material shortages.
Oh yeah.
Let's not talk about it.
That's a whole other.
Let's keep this positive.
Let's just.
It's definitely gotten better. That's the good thing.
They're not watching the news.
Yep.
So Rodney asks, is the NECA labor manual available online?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And you could buy the physical book online as well, but
you can get an electronic copy PDF of it, or you can buy the actual physical book.
But is there
different levels to it too, and so you can pick your levels of that fits your your company's needs or what you're working on. So
and Brian would probably know this. We do a lot of column 2 NECA labor rates, right? And it's a little shortened up labor rates for some of the customers.
I don't think that you can actually log into something though. And
what shortages? Michael.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a website where you can just.
No, you've got to purchase the manual. Yeah.
Right. Yep. If you Google it, you might find something interesting, but in some of the search results. But I'll leave it at that. What shortages? Michael says. Yeah.
That was good.
All right, we go ahead and we're going to cover bottleneck number 8, and then we did have a couple questions earlier from Matt Smith that I'll come back to. Hopefully, Matt's still with us here. And anyway, so number 8, lack of relationships.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it comes down to having strong relationships with your GCs, and so it's kind of a bottleneck on landing jobs as much as it is. It's one hand, it's to manage a bottleneck. You have strong relationships. You make sure that you communicate properly with the people you're serving. But at the other hand, it's also, getting stuff as soon as you can get it. Sometimes people will layer stuff out there to the people they like, and then they layer it out a little later to the other people to give other people not as good a chance. There's all kinds of different things we see in the industry. So it's just, make sure you're building the strongest relationships possible with your vendors, with your GCs, with your other electrical companies too, because it just always pays off. And you can usually, if you do have a good relationship, you can get yourself a little extra time to get through the bottleneck. I think it's the biggest thing to run home here is just, don't hesitate to call and start to build that. Say, hey, I really want this job. It's really close to my facility. My team, would definitely do a great job on this. I just need 2 more days to get you something, or 3 more. And we've had people extend stuff out weeks.
Oh yeah. And it's been that way the past, 2-3 weeks. We've seen the market change where the GCs are chasing the subs down and extending stuff out so that they can, get the bid into them. But also, you can have the best software ever, the best estimators ever. And it all pivots on what we're talking about right here, relationships with the GCs to win these jobs. It's so important, like Tim said, to be talking to them, communicating, brushing shoulders, and growing these relationships.
Getting the feedback. When
Yep.
you're tossing numbers out there, it's nice to know, were you number 2, were you number 3, were you number 1? When you're number 1, but where did you land and how far off were you? Where was the next guy? A lot of these people will tell you that information. If you're not asking, you should at least try to ask.
And that's how you figure out your labor, like we were talking earlier. That's how you get that.
When you ask the guy, it's a $300,000 project, and you're like, well, hey, who was the closest bid? You won it. Oh yeah, they were 470,000. What did I miss? And then the other thing is, it'll also, if you go too low, the confidence in you is lost sometimes with the people you're bidding on, and it's good to know if that's happening, because if 10 people bid it and you're like way low, way high is different, because it kind of be like, well, I'm too busy, and if you'll pay the price, I'll figure out how to get it done. But way too low will show that you really don't know what you're doing,
right?
And that's another big problem that you got to avoid.
We just came off a wastewater treatment facility for one of our good customers, and we were number 2 guy on like $5,000 on this multi-million wastewater treatment plant.
$5,000 off.
And $5,000 off. And our guy come out shining because he looked like he knew exactly what he was doing, which, we helped partner with him to develop that whole bid. But that's something to take into consideration, because if you just say, hey, you lost, I could think I could have lost that by 10, 100,000. I have no idea. Get the feedback. Oh, we were only $5,000 off of this wastewater treatment facility. We're dialed right in. That's important to know.
Yeah, and a lot of times what that turns into is building that confidence and I guess making sure you bid, because when you're first trying to break into commercial or industrial, and you're going against all these people that already have these relationships, your name's got to pop up. You're going to be up in there a lot. You got to be honing your number, and it's the best time to start figuring out, before you actually land the job, are you in the ballpark? It can be time consuming if you're doing it by yourself. It can be expensive if you're paying us. But at the end of the day, you have to have your name in the ring. You got to start looking like somebody who's constantly coming back before they, some of these jobs like that, the wastewater treatment plant, you got a guy, we're helping break into that market. So if he's 5,000 off and he's not really got a name yet, that's awesome.
It is, absolutely.
On multi-million-dollar projects.
You got to get out there. You got to bid.
I just saw a question come in, Derek, from a Mel Split. Says it really is about this topic. He says, how do you find quality bids to bid, jobs to bid on? Well, that's the whole point. You got to have those relationships. Just being able to submit a bid, or there's an infinite amount of work out there to bid. Literally, there's a whole, there's no limit on the number of jobs you can bid, but you need to have those bids with people that you either have developed relationships with or are developing relationships with. So that's really where you need to start, is developing the relationships, and then being able to provide bids to those people that you're building a relationship with.
Yeah, like grabbing all of a sudden paying for a plan page subscription and looking at all this stuff. It's like candy. You're like, look at all these jobs. It's amazing. Yeah. Look at it all. Well, you better start figuring out if any of those people are worth talking to and working with before you put a bunch of time or pay somebody to get you a price together.
Right.
Because it's not like shooting fish in or catching fish in a barrel. It's a big deal. Like, there's a lot of people going after those things, And when you're breaking your teeth, or when you're cutting your teeth, not breaking your teeth, don't do that. When you're cutting your teeth in this type of stuff, it's better to try to find those people that you can, get a hold of and bid and build your name before you're out on the big, huge plan sites and stuff. That's just one approach.
And another thing with that is knowing, who you're bidding to, and that maybe there's 5 GCs. The one GC you're bidding to, it's not even his job. He's just one of the GCs bidding, and that can really limit you down if you're going to win that job or not.
Get your number to all 5 of them.
Yeah,
so that's another
right.
thing. You're electrical contractor. Make sure you know every GC that's bidding on the job if you're playing in the plan sites, and get that number to every one of them. Because you put the work in, might as well
Absolutely.
get it to all of them.
All right.
We did
And
that.
email, of course, not just calls.
Not doing too bad.
No,
50
we
minutes.
made good
Oh, yeah.
time. We made good time. So, well, first I wanted to mention, feel free to keep asking questions. We'll try to get to them. I think maybe Matt had a question a bit ago that I'm going to try circling back to now. But we covered all our bottlenecks. If you have any questions about a specific bottleneck, I mean, feel free to ask now or later. You know, this is, we're showing our YouTube channel here, just a screenshot of it. So be sure to visit, or you're actually there probably right now. But like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you'll get alerts for future videos. And we don't have it here showing in the slideshow, but Electrical Enlightenment also has a YouTube channel, so look them up. We'll put the link to it in our description of this video once we edit this video. After we
the one we're actively managing is Enlightenment Companies. So if you look at Enlightenment Companies, that's our freshest YouTube channel.
All right, I'll be sure that we link to that one then.
Doesn't look as good as these guys. They got it looking good.
Oh yeah, they're doing good.
We're still dialing it in, thanks to help from you. So hopefully we'll be doing a few more of these videos together.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what other questions we have here.
You want me to take the one from Paul on labor
Sure.
values? So if you're familiar with EBM, there's three columns, column 1, 2, and 3. The EBM column 3 is based on NECA normal. Column 2 and column 1 in EBM are kind of independent of it, and they're more competitive than NECA. But typically, if you use EBM column 2, you'd be about 60% of normal NECA, or 40% less, whichever way you want to look at it. And then EBM column 1 is another 10 to 15% lower than that. So, and then if you don't know, column NECA normal, they have column 2 and 3 in the NECA manual, what they call normals, difficult and very difficult. The NECA 2 is 25% higher than NECA 1. NECA 3 is 50% higher than NECA 1. So you can factor those numbers pretty easily if you want to go to NECA 2 versus NECA 1. And there's also a way you can create those columns in EBM if you just want to have them ready. But so again, NECA normal is the same as EBM column 3.
All right, that was a lot of columns and
Oh yeah,
things going on.
And I was trying to hit on column 2 earlier because I hear that all the time. That was well explained. Yep.
Well, and then the other fun thing I was going to throw out there for people who are running a couple teams out there is just maybe one team's a 1 and one's a 2.
Yeah, we got to be real about that, though, right?
You do have to. You will lose the company money if you're not real about the efficiency of your team, and I think that's super important because you got to make money.
All right, see another one here, Brian. That Michael mentioned doing walkthroughs.
Take a picture of the attendance sheet. That's a good idea. That'll tell you who else has bid in the job. Yeah, and it should. Well, the electrical contractors may be a little harder to ascertain, but the general contractors, that should be. If it's a listed job, that everybody should be pretty much well known. The other source is your suppliers. Your suppliers will often know who's bid in the job too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
they'll tell you there's 20 guys bidding the job, or they'll tell you I haven't got anybody else looking at it. So that's good feedback.
Say, which guy did you give pricing to early? No.
Holding out on everyone else. You got to watch out for that too. Last minute pricing.
That's people to have a relationship with right there. Your vendor for lighting and gear.
Yep.
All right, we John here. Looks like he's going to be reaching out to you guys at Electrical Enlightenment.
Awesome.
We love you, John.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
And here's one for you, Brian.
Is there additional education needed before using EBM? I guess kind of a tough one to answer. I mean, we you need to be able to read blueprints. I've actually trained people who didn't even know how to read electrical blueprints, so that's like starting from scratch. Had one just a couple weeks ago, but we normally assume you know how to read the blueprints and can do a takeoff. You can count up the fixtures, you know how to measure the feeders, you know how to do the basics of a takeoff. I do teach an estimating fundamentals class too. I've done that in a number of at different trade associations around the country, where we start with the real basics of how you count all the symbols, how you measure all of the wiring that needs to be measured, and then how you turn that into a material list. That process is important to understand. Even though your estimating software will do most of that for you, you still need to understand what's happening behind the scenes. When you count up a receptacle, you need to know all the parts that go with it. When you measure the wiring for it, you need to know all the parts that go for that. And then it's a matter of assigning prices to all those items and labor values to all those items. So that part of the process is pretty important. And typically an electrician doesn't get that kind of training in the field. Maybe it's a project manager that gets exposed to it a little bit, but typically, their job is just to install it in the most efficient way possible. So it is a part of the industry that definitely needs to be addressed as far as the estimating part of it.
Right. If I could add something regarding EBM specifically, when you purchase EBM, we usually include 2 hours as part of the product. When you buy it, 2 hours one-on-one time with Brian here. So he'll step you through how to use the software for your and somewhat for your specific situation that you're dealing with your business and your jobs. And there's a bunch of help videos built into EBM. There's of course our YouTube channel, and there's definitely help available. If you have some understanding of estimating, like Brian, I think you were touching more on jumping up to becoming an estimator, whether you're using software or not.
Mm-hmm.
That of course is important, kind of a prerequisite. You can't just go from the working in the field, I suppose, to jumping into making bids with EBM. But maybe if you have enough experience, you could get a small job out, right, on your own. And I'm thinking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that answers it. It's our software. One of the things that differentiates EBM, and we've prided in it, is to try to keep it as simple as possible. You can make it complicated as you want, as you learn and grow into it. But when you first start, everything's there for you. And there's, of course, our support team is here also. You can ask them questions via email, or they can call you if need be. So it's...
But it can be overwhelming to a new estimator. There's
Yeah.
a lot of number crunching and data that has to happen to do a proper estimate.
Third-party support teams over here.
Yep.
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
there you go.
And
We help people too.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the feedback that I've gotten comparing multiple softwares, because we've done takeoffs and we've done them in each different software on the same job, all separately. And Vision was our quickest one and our most user friendly one. So it's always, for us, the one that our estimators gravitate towards. But and that's not even a shout out to Vision. I mean, that's the real deal feedback
That's
that I'm
real.
always hearing back. Yeah.
Good, thank you. Yeah.
And the guys we only use all their softwares if our customers want us to.
Yep.
We won't name those softwares
Exactly
on it,
right.
but
Yep.
all of our stuff gets done in EBM unless the customer
Requests different. Yep.
dictates.
All right. So I got one more from Matt. Can you explain bid bonds? Oh, of course, Michael here vouching for Brian's on-site class you took in Baltimore 7 years ago. Thanks, Michael.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Found out today one of our guys took Brian's class and enjoyed it over in Texas.
Yeah. Awesome. Can you explain bid?
Yeah, just getting bonded is getting backed on the project. So you want to dive into that, Brian?
Sure. Yeah. A bond is just basically an insurance policy. A lot of the time, the general contractor will provide a bond for the entire job. and it's just an insurance package or an insurance that says, if you can't perform, if you go out of business, the insurance company will step in with money to provide somebody else to do the work. Now, usually the electrical contractor, especially on smaller jobs, won't have to provide the bonding themselves. On larger jobs, they might have to provide the cost of the bond in their bid. And then you have to go to a bonding company, and they'll tell you it's X percent. It's usually just 1 or 2% of the price of the job, and then you would include that in the cost of your bid. But that's something that the general contractor should be able to tell you, or the bid requirements will tell you at a time, as if you need to provide a bond for your company versus the general contractor bonding the entire job. And that's not necessarily a requirement either. But if it's the general contractor, and then that's something you don't need to worry about.
Yep, and we just seen that's been it comes up a few times a year where a bonding thing becomes an issue, and at the end of the day, it's just something to look for when you're going to bid a job. Just if it says something about bonding, pay attention to it. Make sure that either you're ready to address it or you're not. It's to save you time from putting a bunch of time into or paying somebody to do an estimate for you and finding out that it's just not something you want to do.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Matt. And you want to jump to the last slide there, Brian?
Isn't this the last slide? Oh, I guess not.
One more.
Okay.
Just has some contact information. Oh, I guess let's try this one out. There you go. Yeah, so if you have any other questions, here's our phone number, our website down here, and also Electrical Enlightenment's website is here. We'll put links, of course, in the description of the video, so you can look at those. That'll be hot linked, so you can just click on them. You could email us at sales@visioninfosoft.com. I don't know if you want to drop an email address here that people can email you, or you just want them to go to your website, Tim?
They can hit Brent. They can
Website's
hit
perfect,
Brent.
and it's customer service at enlightenmentcompanies.com. That'll bring you right to Tim and I, and then I'll respond to that.
Customer service.
Plus he's on vacation.
Enlightenmentcompanies.com. Customer service at. All right, I just threw that in the chat.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And we'll include that in the video description as well, probably in an hour or later today. Well, looks like we covered all the questions. We broke through the hour mark, and we still have 26 people with us. Thanks for hanging out.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I think this has been a lot of fun to do with you, Tim and Brent. You brought so many good stories and feedback, and I love the questions we got too. So we'll have to do more of these, kind of more of a roundtable discussion, and take questions like this. I like this.
Yeah,
Thank
I love
you.
it.
Absolutely.
It was great.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, give us ideas, right?
Yep.
That's right.
Ask for what you want to see.
Yeah, what do you
guys.
want to hear about? Absolutely.
26 people. Give us some feedback.
Cool.
All right. We got a thanks.
All right.
We got a thanks. We'll take that. We'll take that. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
We'll see
thanks,
you guys
everybody.
next time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Bye,
day.
everyone.
Thank you. See you guys.